Welcome to the Everything Is Earned podcast. I'm your host, Mike.
And I'm your co-host, Tim.
And we're here to break down everything happening in your Cleveland sports world. And we have a great episode for you guys today. As we all know, the NFL draft is happening Thursday, 8 p.m. The Browns currently have the 10th pick and have not traded out of it yet. So we got some stuff on the board here. We have a lot of options early in the draft. They're saying this draft is going to be a little bit wild just because of how all the teams are able to scout, all the teams are able to view footage, and with all the pro days and all the craziness just around the coronavirus, how it's changing this year's NFL draft. Now, one of the things going on is it's going to be a virtual draft, and the NFL has been talking about it for the past couple weeks here, and very recently they said some of the technical difficulties they're having is all 32 teams are going to be on a conference call, and that requires people to mute their lines as to not create confusion for the rest of the call. As we all know, in conference calls, it's very common on large conference calls for people to not hit mute and for someone's dog or someone be yelling or cussing in the background. And people usually have to say, hey, mute your lines. If you're not speaking, mute your lines.
Or it could bring up the fact of who you're drafting next and change the whole dynamic of trading with another team.
It could be more drama.
Or changing their plans on that selection.
If I was to pick an NFL team to make a mistake during the draft conference call, who would you think would be making that mistake?
The Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions. Oh,
the 2017 Cleveland Browns, maybe. Hugh Jackson, Paul DePostra, Browns.
DePossesta.
I always mispronounce it.
I will say, if a team is going to mess up and have a blunder, for me it's going to be the New York Giants. They've been an absolute mess, and I don't believe that the technology is going to be easy for them to figure out. I think they have a hard time.
I think the Jaguars could also be a team to look for.
Man, the Jaguars have just been bleeding this offseason. I mean,
outside
of dumping Nick Foles' contract, which was good for them, putting Fournette on the block, possibly losing Nunn, which is crazy, and they've already lost several big pieces, and they signed Joe Schobert, which really isn't a big upgrade for them.
Yeah, they paid him. They paid him like a good elite linebacker money.
So they're an interesting team. I just don't think they're having a good offseason. We'll say that.
No, I don't think so. But it's definitely gonna be an interesting draft to see how the first ever virtual NFL drafts would go down, and see how the technical difficulties, the issues that each individual team faces during this new type of
climate that we're in, really.
Yes.
Okay. Before we go into the draft stuff, I just want to remind you of the time the Browns failed to make a trade at the deadline due to not filing the paperwork correctly. During the Hugh Jackson era, they were trying to get that quarterback from the Bengals, and we ended up messing it up and not getting anybody at all.
I think someone in the front office intentionally did that, so we didn't trade for who was the quarterback again?
Some nobody.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
He's a nobody. He didn't make it out of anywhere. But it was a super cluster, and the Browns didn't make it happen. I think Andrew Berry is tech savvy enough, and if he's in analytics, I think that he'll have no problem at all working in the computer systems with the conference calls and that whole combination. One more thing before we get in the draft here. The Chargers came out with new uniforms for their team because Tyrod Taylor is their quarterback this year. They had to do something interesting. Did you like the Chargers uniforms?
No, I saw them. I think for the first time today, and they added the two lightning bolts on each shoulder pad, which looks really, really awful. And I didn't know New England also had new uniforms. Those, the Patriots and the Chargers uniforms are almost as bad as the Rams' new logo.
Okay, I personally thought the Chargers uniform was awesome, but
it's real gross. The rest of it looks completely fine, and then they just botched the entire thing with the shoulder pad logos on there. on each side.
They did lose Phillip Rivers. Actually, didn't lose him. Let him walk. And they did lose Melvin Gordon to let him walk.
A.J. McCarron. That's the guy that we failed to put in the trade slip for in time.
We saved ourselves from that one. It was a mess.
It was like a couple years directly after the Nick Foles thing happened. You had who was that guy under who Seattle who got paid?
Flynn.
It was right after those guys got paid. You had Nick Foles lead Philadelphia to a title, to a Super Bowl, and then they thought AJ. Oh, then you have Garoppolo from New England go over to 49ers and have a great start to the year before he had the injury, and then he thought AJ McCarron was going to be that Nets guy who's been a backup for a long time. And is ready to step into a starter role for a franchise quarterback.
I just didn't trust Hugh Jackson's evaluation on anything. I mean, he was the one that told us to trust us with Cody Kessler in the 3rd round. So,
but then told us to watch the tape every time he had a press conference. So
I wish I could do that more often in any part of my life. I'm gonna need to review the facts in the film. I'm gonna need to go back and see if I actually did the dishes or I didn't do the dishes. We're gonna have to come back to it. And just I'll have to watch the tape and let you know. So moving towards the draft here.
That'd be really funny.
Moving towards the draft here. A lot of speculation that the Browns could actually trade down and get and back up a little bit. So they would take the 10th pick and deal it to somebody else in exchange for additional picks if their guy is not available at 10. People are saying their guy is the left tackle. Andrew, what's his face?
Andrew Thomas.
Andrew Thomas. Yeah, he's the big name we keep hearing. That's the one that people are really saying the Browns are zeroing in on.
That's Thomas at tackle for the Browns. I do really enjoy. I do really like the prospect of Andrew Thomas, but after doing a deep dive into the other top left tackles and right tackles in this draft, who is many are saying that to change over to left tackle if they started most of their college career as a right tackle. And I liked a few. I would love Andrew Thomas if he's on the board, and say Becton and Jedrick Wills off the board, then absolutely take him. But if they're on the board still, if these two guys, Mekhi Becton out of Louisville, who's just an absolute, he's 6'7", he's like 360, and he ran a 5'1".
He's crazy.
40.
He's crazy fast. He's super athletic.
Yeah, he ran a 5.1 40-yard dash.
Yeah, he's like the
360 pounds.
He's like the Zion of left tackles at this point. The dude's an athletic freak.
Okay, I like that comparison in the regard they're both very, very raw. They're extremely physically gifted, but they're very raw in both of their individual sports. He has a lot of natural talent and ability. He's incredibly strong. From a left tackle standpoint, he has, I think, the most upside out of any tackle in the draft, which is very appealing. And he has extremely long arms at his height. That's no surprise. He does have good natural fundamentals, but he needs a lot of polishing. He needs a lot of coaching up coming out of this draft. I think if he's on the board, which I don't think he will be, I think many other teams will be looking for offensive tackle help to secure either the left or right tackle spot. And I think he'll be the first off the board. But if he is, you absolutely have to take him at 10.
Who, Becton?
Becton, yeah.
Really? Wow, okay.
Mekhi Becton. If he's on the board at 10, you're absolutely taking him. No question about it, in my opinion. But if he's off the board, and I expect him to be off the board, and you have Jedrick Wills from Alabama, who I think is the most fundamentally sound tackle in the draft, which he's not as athletic, but he's very efficient. He's still very efficient. Efficient athletically. He's still very capable.
Here's what I've seen about him. I've seen he's the most NFL ready and the best plug and play guy.
Jedrick?
If you want to go in right now with Wills and you plug and play him and you want to just jump into the season without missing a step here, he's the guy to do that.
Yeah, he's the most NFL ready. He's the most polished to come out. And with all the coronavirus things happening, the pandemic going on, you might want to just take the safe bet, but let a sure bet. If you look at all four of these guys, Becton, Wills, Andrew Thomas, and Tristan Wirfs, then the most likely to be a starter and a long-term starter, I think, will have to be Jedrick Wills. His fundamentals and his technique are hands down the superior and the most advanced at this point in their careers. And he's just a solid pick, depending, like I said, the most, I don't think versatile, but the most plug-and-play guy. Well, depending on your situation, he's the guy that's going to fit best for you out of those four guys.
Yeah, I'm interested in who who would be the top on the board for the Browns, because Joe Thomas actually, very similar to you, had Becton 1, had Wills number 2, but he's saying that that Wills can be the way to go as far as NFL ready, and I'm always a little leery about guys who are prospects, especially when when you and I keep talking about having a window. And I feel like I almost get stuck in that mentality where if I've been burned before, I'm hesitant to get burned again. And when I'm talking about getting burned, I'm talking about Cam Irving. So he's a guy that was sold to me as a good prospect who could play multiple positions, had a lot of versatility, was very athletic, but did not pan out. Obviously, he goes over to Kansas City. He gets coached up properly by Andy Reid and will go wins the Super Bowl. But what the Browns were able to do with him was close to nothing, and he looked like he was on skates the entire time he was in Cleveland.
Which prospect are we comparing Cam Irving to? We talking Jedrick Wills right now?
I'm talking about Becton. I'm talking.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was gonna say Jedrick Wills would be nothing, or wouldn't be none of that. What you just said would be apply. Would be applicable to Jedrick Wills, because he's very coachable. He's the most fundamental. I said the most polished. So yeah, I didn't see Becton, but he's just so physically gifted and has such a high potential if you coach him up, and if you believe in the coaching staff, that what we have here, with the O-line coach and with your offense coordinators here, that if he's on the board, like I said, I honestly don't think he will be on the board. But if he is, then you have to take him for the upside alone.
You know who else we got burned by recently? Austin Corbett.
Okay, but he was more in the, I want to say.
So in the last 5 years,
more, he fit more of the Jedrick Wills kind of mold, but he was nothing like Jedrick Wills.
Okay, but the last 5 years, you've gotten burned twice on offensive linemen that were high prospects.
He was also projected as a guard too.
High versatility. Big time upside if they get coached up properly. I'm just nervous to take a guy like that when you have the 10th pick, you have the ability to grab a guy if he's on the board and move your franchise forward. And I think at this point, when you have a roster built as it is, you can't afford to go take a risk now at the 10th pick. You have to take a sure prospect, and you have to get the best talent available.
Wills is a sure prospect. You have 4 top 5, 3 in my opinion.
That's what I'm saying. I like the Wills. I like the Wills idea.
Top 5 tackles in the draft. I don't believe Tristan Wirfs is a top 5 tackle in the draft. I think he's way less on my farther down my board than many people. I think I see him falling outside the top 15. Some people think he's the best tackle in the draft. I think he's way less polished than the other 3 as well. And I think he has too many mistakes where he's a little bit slow on his feet and he stays on his blocks a little bit long. I think he sometimes he has a tendency to wanna plow over a guy and stay on the inside guy, and instead of not trust his guard to hand him off to his guard and get the outside guy. So sometimes he he gets too focused on his initial assignment instead of just passing him off to his guard, and that leaves him vulnerable on the outside to rushing attacks with quick edge rushes.
But I'm saying what I'm saying is my pick would be Wills. I think he's the way to go. If you want to get a sure a guy who's going to be plug and play, who's going to be the safe bet. I'm all about safe bets right now. I think that I've taken enough risks over the last few years here, and I'm looking at safe bets because I want to build this team into a playoff team this season. I'm not looking at next season. I'm not looking at the next. I'm not looking at the next 5 years. I want to build a team to go to the playoffs right now, and so I can't afford to have a guy that's not going to be NFL ready till midseason. He's the most. Here's why I make my point. Okay, so you got a guy who's NFL ready, who's going to be ready to plug and play and start, versus the guy who's a prospect. All it takes is for the prospect guy to have a mental lapse, to misplay something, and get Baker Mayfield blindsided, and then there goes your season.
Okay.
Now you have your backup in Keenum, which isn't a bad thing, but I'd rather have a guy who I have a higher level of trust with.
Let me fill you in a little bit on the scenario. So you have these four prospects, these tackles: Becton, Wills, Thomas, and Wolves. Two of them have been played the majority of their snaps in college as a left tackle. Two of them played the majority of their snaps at right tackle. So the two left tackles that played the majority of the snaps at that position is Becton and Thomas. Okay, and you have. So in order, in my opinion, of best, who you select out of those two, you go Becton and Thomas at that left tackle position. And then you have Wills and Wolves at your right tackle. So are you betting on the most polished out of those players in Jedrick Wills to make that transition over from right tackle to left tackle? Because you have the right tackle position filled up now with the addition of Jack Conklin. And now, so I want to let you know that I believe Andrew Thomas has the second highest potential out of those four players. So I think the lowest ceiling comparative to where his skill is right now is Jedrick Wills. I think the other three have the most upside. So he's the most polished, but he also has the least space to go from where he is right now. So I think Andrew Thomas is technically your second best prospect out of these four because he's already pretty polished, but he has so much potential. Just below, not just below, but underneath Becton with what he's shown so far and some glimpses of what he's been able to do. I think he has a potential to be a dominant left tackle, and he's played that position his entire college career. So I think it would be interesting to see if you want to take that the risk of moving Wills over to left tackle, or do you want to take the safe bet, knowing that Andrew Thomas can transition to that because he's played that position.
Okay, I mean I get you there. I just want a guy who is going to come in and be consistently good at that position. And so I'm not trying to take any big risks. I don't think Andrews is going to be on the board at that point. That's why I would say I would take Wills. I'm just looking for a guy who's going to consistently do his job and make that line solidified. And to me, an offensive line is something that can obviously derail your offense. But I think when you have guys on the line that are already very, very good, in Teller and Batonio.
Do you think Teller's very good at right guard?
Teller?
I think we at some point. Wyatt Teller.
No, Wyatt Teller's not our squad anymore. I'm
J.C. Treader is
center.
center.
Yeah, I'm talking about our center. J.C. Treader.
Batonio on your left side. He moved over to your left guard.
Yeah, and
right guard kind of needs to be filled as well. I think the Browns will address that later in the draft.
So, I think if you get a good solid left tackle, your line's in very good position, and so I'm not looking to try to hit any any grand slams here. I'm looking to hit a double, or I'm looking to hit a double.
He's trying to get on base. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm not trying to get on base. I'm looking at the consistency of the position, and you look at a guy like like Batonio or JC Treader. They've been very, very good the last couple of years.
Consistent.
Yeah, and that's what I need on my offensive line, and they work harmoniously together. So if you got guys in the line who are already very good, you can elevate the play of a solid offensive tackle.
Well, think about this. You have Becton, who's 6'7", 360, and you have Andrew Thomas, who's 6'5", 315. Then you have Jedrick Wells.
Let me throw something stupid out there. Let me throw something really stupid out there.
Go ahead.
Could you go ahead and take Becton, but also trade for Trent Williams or sign Jason Peters to teach him how to play the position?
Absolutely. If you get Becton, I think that's the ideal scenario for him, because you have a veteran that could very well start out the season for you, the first few games, or maybe all season if Becton needs it to learn how to play that position in the NFL. And I think that would be the right call. But I think Becton has enough raw potential that he could starting him at left tackle, and the offensive coordinators kind of play their offense around him and make sure that they keep him what he's good at, and don't try to extend him too far. Or Baker, if Baker kind of has some communication with him and understands where he's at and doesn't try to stretch him too far, where it's hurting the team in penalties or in blindside hits or what have you. I just see the potential in the running game to be so huge for a guy like Nick Chubb to put a guy like that to blast holes and to pancake defenders off the left side.
Now, do you remember what happened last year when the Browns they realized that Austin Corbett wasn't the move, and they started panicking and trying to find someone to help fit that position, and they had Robinson over at the left side, and they knew he wasn't the answer, and so when they had two guys that were kind of not the answer, all those Trent Williams rumors kind of came out. They were trying to make a trade during the season, and they just realized, pretty early in the camp, and then pretty early in preseason, that they was not going to work out, and they were kind of up a creek. So I just don't want to be in the position where we get to the second week of training camp and we go, oh shoot, we don't have a left tackle that's going to be able to protect Baker. We're in some real crap. Let's go make a move for Trent Williams and overpay for him. Or let's go sign Jason Peters and hope he doesn't get hurt. I just don't want to be in that scenario.
I think we could get Trent Williams for relatively cheap, not cheap, but a decent bargain. We're giving up a third or a fourth and a fifth one. We don't have a fifth this year, I think.
I just want to see how strong the hands are.
No, we don't have a fifth, but we could give up a fourth and a sixth or something like that for him. But I can see us doing 2 outs. I could easily see Becton and Wills being off the board by the time we pick, and you have to decide. In my opinion, Wills isn't an option at 10. You maybe can trade back for him and get him at 18, 20, 22. But in my opinion, that's not worth it at the value at number 10. You can either, so in that case, you can get Andrew Thomas at number 10, who I think in most drafts could be easily the number one tackle coming out. Like I said, you have 3 top 5 pick options at tackle. But you could also, now that we're talking about tackles, we've gone down that giant rabbit hole. You could also go a different route and look to grab CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, a wide receiver at number 10.
I like Lamb, man.
He's very nice.
I think he's really nice. I think he is really nice. But here's the thing, man. Like, in Stefanski's offense, he's running 2 wide receiver sets. And then at this point, you have to understand, like, you're only gonna further those Odell Beckham rumors if you grab a wide receiver.
Or you're adding insurance, and that way you don't have to re-sign Higgins. You need a solid third string.
You do.
And if you draft Lamb, you would have a player under 3 or 4 years contract under a reasonable salary, where you don't have to worry about that. And if he becomes an excellent third or even potentially a second in a lot of teams, maybe in the first your number one wideout on a lot of teams, then that gives you insurance in case Odell goes down or Landry goes down, because they're both coming off of injuries. Landry just had a surgery. I think Odell's electing to do one as well.
Yeah.
An optional one.
Yeah, he did that one. Yeah.
And it would be in their best interest if they would get another wide receiver.
Okay, but I'm gonna flip the script on you a little bit here.
Flip it.
You know that this wide
Flip
receiver draft class here
was
one of the deepest wide receiver draft class probably of all time. They said very early on, and it's been repeated, plenty of times now, that this is a deep wide receiver class. You don't have to grab a wide receiver in the first round in order to get a quality wide receiver. I think you're going to draft a wide receiver at some point here in this draft. I just would rather wait to round like 3 or 4.
I agree.
You can find value later on.
So if you say we have all 3 of those tackles off, the 3 best ones I mentioned, Thomas, Becton, and Wills, trade back in drafts, accumulate a few picks, go for a linebacker or a safety at that point.
You know who we could trade back with? My Falcons. They have the 16th pick, and they want to get in the top 10 because they're aggressively trying to grab another defensive player. And especially if there's a good crop of defensive players, like a cornerback, because the Falcons are very much in the market for a corner. You could definitely see the Falcons move up in the draft. That would not surprise me. One of the things that I'm looking for in the first few rounds here is to obviously pick up a linebacker, and possibly pick up another piece in the secondary. Now, linebacker-wise, who do you like a linebacker?
I'm looking later in the draft, I think, at linebacker.
You don't have any early linebacker picks?
Let me see. I think my earliest, where is he at?
I liked Isaiah Sims, even though he's like a positionless player at this point. But a lot of the mocks I've been doing, he ends up getting taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars because they need someone to replace their defensive losses. I think he'd be an interesting idea. If I'm going to address the secondary, one of the things that came up today is that Malik Hooker, former Ohio State safety, who's currently with the Colts in the last year of his contract, has been made available for trade. Now, look at all the trades that have happened so far this offseason. There's some big-time names going for very little compensation on the other end. I don't know if it would take a 5th or a 6th or what it would take to get Malik Hooker
I don't think
in a
take
Browns
anything
uniform.
more than a 4th.
But you could definitely make a move to get Malik Hooker. Now I say he's going to want to get his contract renewed. He's going to want to get an extension. Why not, man? Why not get an Ohio State guy who has a nose for the football?
Ball hawker.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Has a great read on the quarterback. He reads that very well.
He's an outstanding player. There is some concerns with his health, but you get a guy who is familiar with the Cleveland area, familiar with Ohio, obviously a hometown favorite, and who is very highly skilled in that position. I'm just one of those believers that when you have a guy who plays for a team that he within a state he's played for before, you get a certain extra oomph out of him. If you remember Dante Whitner, he was a big time player for the Browns for a couple seasons.
I think it's easy for those players who's played in the state before to get reimmersed into the city and have that a certain spark or passion be reignited under them. I think you've seen that under certain players. I think you've seen many of these players come out of the draft say, "Oh, I'd love to come back into." Drafted by someone in the state, whether it's Cincinnati, whether it be the Browns, because they understand the loyalty and the passion in the fans, and they know at least that end can fire them up, and that end they don't have to worry about. And like I said, it creates kind of an extra little boost for that player or the rest of that team.
I agree there, and I think you play at a higher level when you know you have the support of the fans and of the state. For example, look at Peppers, who played
Jabril Peppers.
who played for Michigan, was drafted by the Browns. Took him a little while to get his feet wet and to actually find his footing in the NFL. And I think part of that was actually due to the way fans reacted to him. There's a lot of Ohio State loyalists that are also Browns fans, and they gave him a hard time. Very unwarranted.
I hate that.
Very
I
unwarranted.
really do.
But you could see that it bothered him, and you could tell it bothered him in interviews and stuff as well. I mean, you can fully support your college team. That's fine. But I'm not going to hold a player against where he went to college. He's now on my team. I'm going to support him 100%. I'm not going to boo my own player or talk down to one of my own guys because of where he went to college. That's silly. So when you got a guy who was played in the state, who was a Ohio State guy, who was very well liked by Ohio State fans when he played for Ohio State, I think it'd be a great fit.
I think one thing you didn't mention yet with players playing better for their home state is they understand their life outside of the field, off the field. They understand the lifestyle during the times they're not at practice or they're not playing games, and they understand the weather sometimes. That's a big part of it. And depending, I think if they played within that region, I think that helps always. But I think it's an extra added little understanding coming into it where they really feel comfortable coming in that situation because they've been around that situation growing up, or they understand this the weather and their lifestyle and how they're going to get used to that as well as becoming a professional in their sport.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I think when you've played it before, or if you grew up here, you have an understanding for how people are. And I think you can see that from like a guy like Denzel Ward in particular. Denzel Ward has fully embraced the Cavs fan base and has been very well acclimated into the Browns. And he played his high school ball up in Canton area.
So he's very familiar with Northeast Ohio. You mentioned to kind of turn this back into discussion we're having. You mentioned if I had linebackers on my radar, and I had to find it because I have a few players on this list, but I do. In the third round, a second pick in the third round, and number 97 or the first one, depending on how things fall. But I think he's more of a late third round prospect here. I have Akeem Davis Gaither out of Appalachian State. He's more of an edge rusher. He's not. He's very versatile, and he's not. He doesn't make his money from a coverage standpoint. He's gonna be a blitzing edge rusher. I think he's gonna be a role player. I think he's gonna be what we wanted Gerard Avery to be before the new management decided they didn't want him or they didn't fit in the old scheme, the old 5-2-4. And he's a very, I want to say, he's a very explosive player. He's not very large. He's 6'1", 220, but he's a little stocky. But he's a very physical linebacker. He just makes a playmaker. You see him on the stat sheet everywhere. He's forced fumbles, his interceptions, pass breakups. He had a blocked field goal. So even if he doesn't contribute for your normal defense right off the bat, he can be a factor on the special teams just to get some experience at that level. He's kind of a tweener. That's why you can. I think you can either play. That's why I think he was best off the edge, because you can either play him from that standing position, either at the defensive end, or you can play him off the edge on linebacker, because he doesn't have one specific position.
Yeah, he's a speed guy. I like that idea of I like your idea there. I think he'd be a nice fit to go along with Taki and Mac Wilson. He'd be a very complimentary type of linebacker. But
they fly around a little bit more, and they're more coverage backers. And then he affects the pass rush more.
Here's something I like about him. He's an excellent tackler. Now, if you watched any games last year, you know that missed tackles on multiple days hurt the Browns. And I like guys who have good proper technique and I don't have to go out and teach him how to tackle.
Well, he's physical, and he wraps up on the legs like you're supposed to. But I think the last time we heard this concept, he's a football player. I think the last time we heard this as Browns fans was Jabril Peppers. You don't know where to put him, but you know he's going to affect the game somehow. I think he's one of those players. He just affects the game somehow on all levels. I think, and he has great instincts. That's why that's something I really want as either a defensive end or in that front seven. You want someone who has great instincts, who knows to make a read on the field, and I think he does. He has a very good understanding of that.
Yeah, they're saying a lot of places are saying that he could be a good sub linebacker. They're saying he's targeted here by a lot of teams, especially in the AFC North, because of the different schemes that the Browns will play, the Bengals play, and the Ravens play.
He can be in a lot of different packages, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They think he could be a really interesting prospect in one of the mid-tier rounds.
He doesn't have many gaps, but at the same point, he doesn't have anything he's super elite at. Besides, I'd say he's a very excellent tackler.
Here's something interesting. So I was just complaining a minute ago about how Sims kept getting taken in the top 10. I did another draft here on Pro Football Focus, and just on this quick mock one here, they had Jacksonville take Henry Ruggs out of Alabama, and they had CeeDee Lamb go number 7 to Carolina, which is interesting. I don't disagree with either of those. So that would actually put Isaiah what's his face at Sims.
Your linebacker?
The safety combo hybrid guy, yeah. Okay. That would put him at 10 for the Browns, which I would be very hard pressed not to take.
Who is he out of? Alabama?
Sims? Yeah, Isaiah Sims, Clemson.
Okay.
Yeah. The dude's an absolute animal. I think if he's available, you have to take him. Honestly, I think there's no more intriguing prospect besides him and Chase.
Is he inside, outside?
He's a safety, man. He's officially a safety. Okay. He's just a wild player.
Where does the NFL scouts have him?
In the top 10, man.
No, I'm saying what position do they have him playing in? You said he's a safety. You said he's a hybrid. So you said he's played some linebacker.
They say
what's he best fit for?
They say he's kind of wild because he can do like a little bit of everything. He's a crazy athlete.
What's his measurements? What is he?
He's 6'3", 230.
Okay, so he's more of a linebacker build.
Yeah,
he's definitely more of a linebacker build. He's not going to be playing. In my opinion, he's not going to be playing safety.
Okay, here's what he did in college though. He played 218 snaps at safety. He played 286 snaps at the slot corner. He played 160 snaps at the outside linebacker. He played 120 snaps as the middle linebacker, and then he played 17 snaps as the primary corner. So he's literally played all the most important positions on the football field for the most part.
So he's a football player.
Yeah, he's an absolute football player. Exactly. So here's what I'm going to say. Breaking down what Andrew Berry said recently about the draft. He said he's treating the draft like it's an expansion draft.
That's insane to me, by the way.
That is insane.
I'm going to take our discussion aside and talk about that for a minute.
So you know what that means, though? When your GM says that, he's either trying to throw smoke out there, or the second piece is he could be saying, I'm going to take the best player available who was ever on the board.
I think that's what he's saying. I think if you have like one of these tackles on the board and he thinks a better player from a different position, maybe Sims is linebacker you're talking about, or a safety that's on the board, I think they're going to take them regardless of position.
Here's what's interesting. Do you think Andrew Berry listened to our podcast last week when we talked about the Cavs and fit versus?
I think we mentioned fit versus talent or overall the most talented.
I'm not gonna
each episode we've had the last couple episodes here.
I'm not gonna say that we're setting trends or that we're starting to find patterns here, but I think at the end of the day, I think a lot of times you should draft best player available, and this draft is really interesting where there are a lot of different positions the Browns could upgrade and then beef up a little bit. But I think this Sims guy is so interesting because you get a guy who can play in literally 3 different positions, it gives you so much you can do on defense, and it gives you versatility too if an injury happens.
Or it changes the way that you can run your defense. Sometimes maybe you can pass your assignments along if you have a receiver or a tight end or running in bad motion, because he has that versatility where he can guard. It's just like basketball where you can guard if you can guard 1 through 5. If you can guard running back, tight end, receiver, you said he's 6'3", so you can probably guard most tight ends in the NFL.
Oh yeah. So here's my thing though, is if I think about the Browns defense, I close my eyes, I think about the Browns defense. I think about the Browns defense since 1999. Can you think of any Browns player that made quarterbacks worried? And I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to think.
Browns player?
And I'm thinking Myles Garrett.
Since 99.
Since 99.
You're talking about, you said linebackers or
any Browns player in defense?
You can say Joe Hayden at some point. I would say you can say Joe Hayden. You can say maybe Cameron Wembley maybe, or the 12 Jackson.
No.
Okay, I've got one. Tashawn Gibson. That guy was a menace from the free safety position. Anytime you threw near him, you knew it might be picked off.
He had like 9 or 10 interceptions that one.
Was it him and T.J. Ward that was a duo, or was it him and Whitner? I want to say
were a duo.
But wasn't him and Ward a duo for 1 year too?
I don't know, man. It was they had some really good chemistry that 1 year where the 1 year in 2010
that was Whitner and
we had
Gibson.
Spent a bunch of money and we tried to make the playoffs and we failed.
We had Scott Fujita.
Yeah, Scott Fujita. No, I don't think it was that year. I think we definitely had.
Well, we had him at
Paul
that point.
Paul Kruger at that point.
We did have Paul Kruger, but we also had Scott Fujita at that point as well.
Okay, Scott Fujita.
But he wasn't that paid guy you're speaking of.
But I think Sims could be a guy that makes a defense really scary. Like if I think about the great defenders over the last 5 or 6 years here, and I'm thinking about it like going team by team, or just like looking at like the current rosters of the NFL. Like you got guys who were legitimately scary. I mean, Luke Kuechly before he retired. You got guys like Bobby Wagner, who's still an animal.
I can't believe he retired already.
Kuechly, good for him, man. Good for him.
That's still mind-boggling to me.
Health over money, baby. I mean, every day of the week. The guy's made plenty of money. He's been amazing for the Panthers. It helps my Falcons, but ultimately, I don't want guys to get CTE. I don't care if you're my worst, least favorite player in the NFL. I don't care, if you're Ben Roethlisberger. I don't want you to get CTE. I would rather you be a healthy person versus playing more years of a sport.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think it was the right call from him. He understands his situation, where his body at, where his health is at, where his mind's at. Falls field. I thought from in the timing, it just came out of nowhere. It was just shocking. Definitely a great move for him though. But we'll have to see with Sims. We'll have to see how it plays out if we trade back. If it ends up falling to us with the way. I think Carolina. You said Carolina potentially wants CeeDee Lamb. We'll have to see how that goes.
There's only a handful of players in the NFL right now who make quarterbacks nervous and who really can affect the game just by being on the field. And I think about the years I've watched football. I think about guys like Ray Lewis and guys like Troy Polamalu who flew all over the place. And that's kind of my comp for him, really, is a Troy Polamalu type. Like a guy that can play multiple positions, who's always kind of around the football and makes big plays when it counts. And I think that's what this guy is. And if you can get a guy who elevates your defense that much, you do it. You do it every day of the week. And if you might even trade up for him. But if you can get him. You have to go take him.
Who do we think? This is in relation to what you're speaking of too. Who do you think? What position does Carl Joseph play? Strong safety?
Yeah, he's safety.
Strong safety?
Yeah.
What did you say? Okay. So talking about guys that fly around, I have a comp for Sims here. I think he would be an excellent value for first third round pick, and even an extremely amazing value for a second third round pick. But if we did him in the second round too, I'd also be happy with that. His name is Aston Davis out of Cal. He's a free safety. This is that type of player that you're talking about. He flies around. He's a former track star. I think he had. I want to say I think he has 4.2 speed, if not 4.3 speed. He's very fast. He's very versatile, but he's not. I wouldn't say he's versatile enough to play as a strong safety, but he's a willing hitter. He's willing to put his body on the line. He does have a short wingspan, and he is older, but I think he's more polished at free safety than a lot of guys currently coming out. And
I like your pick here.
I just want as a safety we've been kind of spoiled with that with T.J. Ward, with Dante Whitner, and seeing what that and even Demarius Randall at very, very select times with his tension with the Cleveland Browns. But we've seen what that athletic, extremely fast, and explosive player out of the secondary can do for not only your cornerbacks but your linebackers as well. Give them that freedom to take more risk, either attacking the line or maybe giving up some space in the gaps between for rushing plays, but giving that insurance that if I play a little more aggressive, I have that guy. I have my guy. He has my back behind me, ready to make a huge hit or cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, they've been saying here this guy's been flying up draft boards. That he's really stood out here in recent days.
Yeah, he started as a late third, and like you said, he's been flying up, and I think people are gonna take him sometime in the second round.
Yeah, they say he's a really good tackler. That he's got a really good competitive toughness. They say that's his big thing. There's not really any red flags on him right now.
Well, the red flags are he has a short wingspan, and he's currently 23 years old, and by I think midway through the season he'll be 24. So those are the only really two red flags you have.
Yeah, but he's not. He ran a 4.28,
which is ridiculous
nuts.
fast. Yeah, I said he's a former track star. He has excellent speed, and yeah, his red flag. The wingspan would be, I think, would be more problematic if he was a corner, but he's a safety.
Yeah,
or a strong safety, but I think his natural position is that free safety spot.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think a guy who is athletic like that, who can fly around, could really make a difference on your defense. I think he's an interesting pick here if you're talking about getting some value, in day two. I think that's a really interesting idea.
And then one thing I noticed watching his film was he does an absolutely great job of reading the quarterback's eyes and being able to make plays and reads based off his instincts, if he has the freedom to do so, and just to be able to make those decisions based off. I think he has pretty good hands too, but make those decisions based off the quarterback's eyes. At the same time, if you have a veteran quarterback who's seen some film on this guy, might be able to manipulate him with his eyes. Some of the better quarterbacks, some of the more elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and burn him for some bigger plays. So that's kind of the trade-off. If you want someone who can make those reads, but he has to learn when to pick him and who he can do that against.
Yeah, a lot of places have him as the third best safety in the draft right now. But like you're saying, former 110-meter hurdle winner. That just shows how athletic he is, and what he can bring to the table. And I always like athletes. In my opinion, when you can grab an athlete on your football team, you can coach up some abilities. But a guy like that who can bring in that raw athleticism is something you can't teach. And that's one of the reasons why I was super happy that the Browns moved on from Joe Schobert, because I didn't think he possessed the natural athletic ability that you need to play in that middle linebacker
Agreed.
position.
If you pair what he was mentally and what he did on the field for you from a mental standpoint, from getting everyone in line and what it was supposed to be as a captain, as an on-field coach, and pair that with elite athleticism, he would have been by far one of the best linebackers in the league. But he just has that below average athleticism from a linebacker standpoint, And if he beats up a little bit, maybe, and that, I mean, it grew a few inches, he might be a better suited as a defensive end. But he is not fast enough, especially especially in that system, the 5-2-4 that we were playing last year.
It's all right. Not everyone's meant to be a star or a standout guy. I mean, he's a big time big time tackler, and definitely played well for the Browns. But I think ultimately you want a guy who's going to bring a little more athleticism at that position,
especially for the value or the money you would be paying him.
Yeah, and the way the league's going into a passing league, you want a guy who can cover more ground. So
exactly,
I'm all about that.
So we do have 2 third-round picks. So I think if we didn't Aston Davis at one of those third-round picks, or probably I'd expect him to be more available at the second round. But I have a few more guys here that I've been looking at. A guy that I'm very intrigued by. I was just looking at him. I want to look at him more after we're done with this. But he's from TCU. He's a nose tackle. And I don't know how much you think the Browns need a nose tackle or a defensive lineman. But he's 6'3", he's 290. I'd say, from a little bit of glimpses, I think he has Aaron Donald light potential. Like a very light Aaron Donald potential.
All right, who's your guy, Tim?
His name is Ross Blacklock out of TCU. He ran a 4.9 40-yard dash. He's incredibly athletic. He has a super quick first step, and he has a tendency. I don't know how this is a tendency. I think it's just you just have to. It's fundamentals, and it's being able to read and manipulate the linemen. But he has a tendency just to split double teams, like break through them, and disrupt the backfield, whether it be the running back or quarterback. And I think I've seen a little bit of footage where he's disrupted like ranked teams. So I want to make sure that wasn't just against unranked teams. But if he can show up a few of his basically the biggest gaps he has is he tore his ACL in 2018.
Achilles.
Yeah, Achilles. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, he missed all of 2018 with a torn Achilles. But if I think he's projected to be a mid, early second round pick. I think he would be a top 15 pick if he didn't tear his Achilles. Like he has incredible potential and talent. I think, like I said, we talked about football, like a football player, an athlete, a player with instincts. This guy is it. Now, if he can recover fully or near fully from his Achilles injury, then he can be a solid Pro Bowl player.
I am just very hesitant about Achilles, knowing what I know about how that affects you in a basketball sense. He missed all of 2018 with the Achilles, but he did play very well in 17 and 19. So I'm always worried about the Achilles injuries. I don't like those. I know those can take away some athleticism and can really reduce your explosiveness.
Speaking on to what you're saying, that affected was Achilles that affected that Adrian Claiborne tore, the recent Cleveland Browns signing?
Maybe, I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you.
I think it was. I want to say it was Atlanta. His first year at Atlanta. But he had a huge injury where he was projected to be that Pro Bowl edge rusher, I think, coming out of college. Either it was right before he came out, or it was directly after that made him a more rotational guy.
He tore his ACL, and he had torn his biceps in 2014.
Okay, so the biggest knock on Blacklock here is that Achilles injury, and with that, people think that his quarterback pressures don't often lead to sacks. But I think if you're the second, third best pass rusher or rusher in general on your team, I think that only makes him more potent because he's not constantly getting double. I think this is a player, at least in college, that you had to double team too. So I think if you can keep some athleticism, that he could definitely be a huge disruptor.
I like your idea. I just want to stay away from guys with torn Achilles. I just don't believe an Achilles is an injury that you get a lot of recovery from. And I'm just gonna make the comparisons. I know it's a different sport, but Kobe tore his Achilles and was never the same. Anderson Varejao tore his Achilles, never the same. And I'm sure that you can get another list of players who tore their Achilles.
I think Grant Hill was at least one of them.
I think there's a lot of guys who never quite get back to their same ability once they tear their Achilles.
If you could drop into outside of the second round, I think that you have to take him based off the potential that he possesses if he can get back to near full strength. And remember, like I said, I think, in my opinion, he's 6'3", 290. Like I said, I think that's 2 inches off from Donald, maybe 10, 15 pounds away from him. He's a defensive end in a nose tackle's body. And if you recall, Sheldon Richardson, who we paid plenty of money, what was it, 40-some million? Just a year ago, had a kind of an underwhelming season. He made a lot of tackles in the running game, but I think he was just kind of lackluster. And you didn't see much of Larry Ojanobi. I'm a huge fan of Larry. I think every year and every opportunity he's got, he's just been better and gotten better. But I don't know with the new personnel if they're gonna use him.
I think he'll be fine. I do want to give you a quick stat here. I know this data might be a little old, but back in 2015, they stated that 36% of NFL or NBA players sustaining an Achilles tendon rupture or tear never returned to pro sports. 36%. Now, just very recently, in recent memory, I just want to mention a couple NBA players.
You said didn't return? He's projected to be in the second round pick. So he's going to be an NFL player.
Sure, but I just think that speaks to the severity of it.
It does.
Kevin Durant ruptures Achilles. DeMarcus Cousins, and his career is basically over.
But he's also 7 feet tall, and yeah.
But we talk about a defensive lineman putting a lot of weight on their body.
280.
They're carrying out a lot of weight. I just don't like that. I want to stay away from that piece.
And a lot of teams might. But I think if we're able to get him in the third round, think about the players we've got in the third round in the past. The most recent, Chad Thomas. I know every day of the week I draft Ross Blacklock over Chad Thomas any day.
I don't disagree with you on that. I don't disagree. I'd take anything over.
Especially like I said, a situation with Sheldon Richardson. He still has a lot of money in the budget. I want to say he has over $30 million still.
Yeah, you got him for a little bit here.
And if he starts the year underperforming and Blacklock comes out ready to go and is pro ready, then you might look to try to shed that cap before the deadline.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Ultimately,
it gives him the freedom with him and Larry Ojanobi to be able to do that. But if you don't have a third option, that third viable option that can maybe come in and start for you at that middle position, then you might not be able to make that trade and free up financially a little bit.
Okay, I'm with you there. Ultimately, here I am excited that they're going to bring in some. We're obviously going to get new players on the team, new opportunities to go out there and add depth to the team. I don't know how many starters you're going to find in this draft. Maybe I think you'd be happy to get 1 or 2 starters in the draft. You're looking to add some depth here to some important positions. So really, I mean, your top 2-3 rounds where you're going to find these starters at, and hopefully you can get some players that'll really beef up your team. And then hopefully once this draft is all once it's underway and the draft kind of shakes out, we'll see some of these players who are available. Maybe make some changes and get on a new team. And for me, I hope the Browns make at least one trade here to add some additional talent that's not through the draft.
I think we'll at least make one trade during the draft, whether it be acquiring Trent Richardson and another pick for one of Trent Williams. I hope we don't acquire Trent Richardson from an XFL team that's been trying to shed some cap space to buy a new dishwasher or a
the XFL is gone, buddy. It's shut down.
Okay, well then
it's not coming back.
We wouldn't be trading anyone out of there. Then.
He's selling eBay merchandise, man. He's signing merchandise.
But yeah,
and selling on eBay. I'm sure.
Trent Williams. I think if we make a deal with Washington during the draft, then I think that deal will include Trent Williams in it, whether it be a combination of him and another pick for one of our picks, or just him straight up for one of our selections. But I think at some point we're either trading that number 10 pick and trading down, or doing a deal with them. I do have one more prospect here. Another third round guy. You mentioned how deep the wide receiver draft is. I think this guy is most comparable to DJ Metcalf, though he's not nearly as physically gifted. He is a physical freak. He 6'4", I want to say 230. Nope. 215, 6'4", 215. He's kind of lean, but he's very strong. He has big. I want to say his big hands, 9.5 inch hands. It's pretty large. He has, unlike CD Lamb. He's not a guy. He's kind of the opposite of CD Lamb. He's not a guy who's gonna make all these big plays after the catch. He's a guy who's gonna make a lot of catches for you, a lot of possession catches where he's just gonna be a very physical guy. He's gonna be catching in traffic and falling down kind of thing. He's 6'4", he's 215. He does a great job of grabbing catches in traffic. He's quick with his hands to grab and pull it and secure it. So I don't think he's had difficulties with dropping the ball, but it's not with those in tight windows. It's the ones that kind of it's not the ones in like high or tough spots too. He's made some absurd catches with one hand. Like if you
who's your guy, Tim? What's his name?
Oh, I didn't mention him?
No, yeah. What's his name?
Brian Edwards out of South Carolina.
I'm dying over here. Like, tell me your guy's name already.
I thought I said it. I was building him up the entire time.
You're building him up and not giving me anything. You're going in depth, and I'm like, who is the mystery guy that we're trying to draft here in the third round? His name is what, Timmy?
Brian Edwards out of South Carolina.
Okay, Tim. All right, that's what I want to see.
I can give you his measurements today. He's 6'4", 215, 9.5 inch hands. He's made some Odell Beckham, potentially even crazier catches in that same corner of the pylon that Odell Beckham did with the Giants.
South Cal.
All
right. I like the idea. I don't know.
I think he complements Jarvis and Odell quite a bit as well. He's a guy that you can put in the third where if you put him, if the Browns draft him, he doesn't have the pressure of being the number one guy or the number two guy right away. He can learn the ropes from one of the best route runners in the game, because route running is not one of his strong suits at this time. He's decent at it, and he makes very explosive one cut moves, but he's not a very guy who's very technical with his route running. But if the Cleveland Browns draft him, he won't need to be right away.
I like the idea of this guy. You are going after all these guys who have come off of injuries and who could maybe find some value.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the value pits. I'm very much in the same concept of John Dorsey without the character issues. Is find me talent, and I was gonna mention this when you talked about finding starters in the first and second round. But if you have a good enough eye for talent, you can find starters in the fifth round. That's how New England's done it. They find these players. They're saying, they're missing this giant gap in the game. But they're only a pass catcher, James White. They're only this zone outside runner, James White. He can't run within the tackles. But if you're using him in the right situations and in the right scheme, then he doesn't need to be that complete player for you. And you can find a lot of starters or these very valuable rotation pieces that are missing maybe this one piece to make them that complete player.
I like your comparison here, doing the value picks, but not going for character issues, going for guys that maybe came off an injury. It's an interesting concept. When I think of injuries, I think this is the kind of the easiest way that I make a comparison. I played a little bit of college basketball. I've been playing basketball for a while, and obviously not anywhere near a pro level. But if you think about like an injury you maybe sustained in basketball or just playing sports or whatever, and think about like how you felt like with that particular injury a year or 2 years down the road. Have you had any injuries that have lingered on or have just never quite gotten back to where you want them to be? And I think of that and then put that on a pro guy and say, okay, they're doing the same thing but at a higher level with a more serious injury. Are they ever going to trust their knee again? Is their knee ever gonna give out because they sustained this injury? Is that something I can work with and get past, or is it something that it's going to have to be addressed again?
Well, to put a little bit more into context and separate and kind of pull the two ideas apart, where a non-professional player and professional athlete, I think you have the entire medical staff that one of us don't have.
That's
and
true.
We, I'd imagine, I'd hope, fingers crossed, or if you're one of these scouts or front offices, GMs that are making these selections, and you imagine that they'd handle them the right way, these injuries, with the counseling of the medical staffs, whether it be in college or a third party outside of that.
I just know from my time in observing sports and absorbing sports that there's plenty of times that injuries are handled incorrectly or guys are playing through injuries, and I would rather have a guy who is coming in healthy with not an injury history versus a guy with an injury history. So I like your idea of the value picks. I think obviously there is some finesse to that and there's some risk reward to that.
I'm gonna feed you a question that kind of to test your concept right there.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about, you just mentioned injury history compared to talent and the or non-injury history.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the talent, the drop off between the injured guy and what his production, what his talent has been when he isn't injured, compared to the healthy guy who's been healthy his entire career but much less unskilled. Where in that level do you make the risk to draft the injured guy? Where in the talent drop off would you select the safe bet?
Okay, so that's a very subjective question. One of the common phrases you hear in sports and time, the best ability is availability.
I think I mentioned that
the best ability is availability. So, not the saying that you can't have talent and whatever outweigh that that injury risk, but I think there's a difference between drafting a prospect and having a proven talent already play at a pro level.
Okay, so how about two players drafted in the same draft? For any of our basketball listeners, say Colin Sexton and Michael Porter Jr. It's not a
fair question.
Hold on, he suffered. Why isn't one far superior, way more talented than the other, but one's injured. One team was coming off an injury and one wasn't. Michael Porter Jr. suffered a back injury, which in pro sports or in sports of any kind can be viewed as a very serious injury, where you can assume or you can predict that they're probably not coming back to the old form, the old.
Here's why I don't think it's
pre-injury form.
It's not a fair question because you're dealing with two different teams with two different levels of where they're at as franchises. The Cavs made a mistake there by not drafting Porter Jr. because they had nothing to lose and you have to swing for the fences. Instead, they took a guy who's a hustle guy, who's a complementary piece, and not the guy who's going to run the show.
Okay.
That's a whole different scenario. The Browns, they don't need another complementary piece. I mean, they do need complementary pieces, but if you have a guy who
he wouldn't be a complementary piece.
I'm not saying he's going to be. I'm just saying I think you need to draft players that are going to be available.
Okay.
And you need to draft players that are going to are going to fill roles. You're not trying to swing for the fences.
I don't think it'd be swinging for the fences. We began this episode speaking of taking the best player, the most talented player available.
Best player
and
available.
At that time,
agree.
Okay, at that time, if he's the best, most talented player available, I think you have to take him, regardless of injury.
No, because you can't put that caveat into it. You have to. It all depends on how the Browns grade out injuries and how the Browns grade injuries per that particular player. What they're going to do with the medicals or the injury history from that particular player.
If they know about it, and if they know about it,
if they release the medicals, yeah.
If they know about the reports, yes.
So ultimately, I think that's a decision that the Browns front office is going to have to make on some of these draft picks, and that's something you always have to deal with when evaluating a draft. For me, I've watched enough drafts, go sour, and I know there's no exact science to drafting, and there's been plenty of data to show that sometimes it's just a crapshoot. But at the end of the day, I like availability when it comes to my players, and I like to take guys who have a higher probability of being on the field. That's just me. And a game that's violent like football, I think you have to weigh injuries even more heavily than you do in other sports.
Yeah, injuries with football is a weird thing because there's a certain durability and toughness factor. With some players,
guys play injured every year.
seemingly to not get injured enough to where they're unplayable, and some players just have a bad streak of the injury bug and just can't seem to fall out of it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just the nature of the game, man. And that's just the nature of humans, man. We're all built a little differently, and some people aren't able to take the same amount of hits and pressures. And you gotta remember, all these hits have different physics to them, so it can be a whole different ball game. Going to a serious factor, just real quick. Think about the Shazier hit, man. That was a hit you only see once in a very blue moon, but it's a very serious and possible consequence to playing tackle football is being paralyzed, and that's something that can actually happen. So at the end of the day, it's hard to weigh out if a player is going to get injured or not. I just prefer that I have a healthier person going into it versus coming in with a previous injury history.
I think I agree. I think there is a mental toughness aspect to it, where you might have two players with similar injuries, but depending on the mentality, it can either be way more. It can be way more devastating or not devastating.
I don't think you can mentally not get an ACL torn versus another person based on their mental toughness. I think at the end of the day, like I said, humans are all unique, and it's going to come down to just some randomness in terms of how injuries occur.
There's
a certain randomness to injuries that you can't predict.
With the way you step or certain hits and stuff like that, yes, but there's a certain physical condition you're in that I can definitely factor in with.
Yeah, if you're a certain level of physically fit, you'd be less prone to certain types of injuries.
And you can say in the NFL there are many players who are far more in shape or physically.
But look at JJ Watt, man. The guy can't stop getting injured. But it's not his fault.
Right, yeah.
What are you going to do about it? So I think ultimately at the end of the day, you're going to make the pick based on your level of comfortability with the injury history and whatnot. So I like the discussion. I think if you and I were drafting, we'd draft differently. But that's the thing, man. NFL drafts, everyone's mock looks different. Everyone's got 20 different mock drafts that look different from person to person. We're just here trying to give you our viewpoints on the talent that we've looked at, the players that are available, and hopefully come draft day on Thursday here, the Browns will put some pieces together to help move the franchise forward.
At the end of the day, I think I came out with more starters in this draft than you did.
All right, well, we'll wait to see. We'll do a review at the end of the NFL season and see whose players were more impactful.
We'll do that.
And are you gonna release your mock draft tomorrow? You gonna post them on
I think we're
Twitters?
both gonna release our mock drafts
I'm ready to mock it up,
before the 8 p.m. start time, correct?
Yeah, on Thursday. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna mock it up, baby. I got some big old mocks coming out.
And for our Friday episode, we're gonna be releasing that late so we can do a review of Thursday's draft.
Oh, dude, we're going to get into the draft talk. It's gonna be aggressive.
So our Friday episode, it will be later than our 7 a.m. release time.
Do you want to go? Do you want to do a live show for the draft one?
We can do both. We'll do both.
Yeah,
we'll have a live.
It,
we'll have a live episode on our socials, and then we also have a main episode.
I'm gonna set up Friday 6 different tablets.
With my work schedule, I will not be able to release the 7 a.m. episode on Friday. So it will have to be with the draft time. I won't be able to. So it will be probably a 1 or 2 p.m. release time for Friday's episode. So we can cover and get and review the first round draft pick.
I like it, man. I'm into it. We're gonna wrap things up here, but I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion about the upcoming draft. I want to know who your guys' pick is for your first pick. Yeah, give me your first couple picks here. We want to hear what you guys got. And then look out for our Friday episode. Like I said, we're gonna be live. It's gonna be great.
Mm-hmm.
Please give us some feedback on the podcast
and
site there.
Yeah,
jump on the Apple Podcast. Give us a review
and leave us a comment underneath the review, underneath a social media post, and leave a bit. If you had a bit aha moment with this episode, whether it would be about a player you didn't know about, a prospect you didn't know about. Or if is there something different with a prospect that you had ideas about or thoughts about?
I like it. We'll be putting out a lot of stuff here in the next couple days. Stay locked into our social media. Turn on the post notifications. It's gonna get crazy real quick, and you can best believe we're gonna be here to cover all the awesome stuff happening around the draft.
Wouldn't be on top of it. It's gonna be tweeting. We'll be posting live as it happens.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fantastic, actually.
Leave little updates of players that we just drafted. Little things few things that we know about them.
You got it, man.
That sort of things.
We're gonna break it down. So that's gonna wrap up this episode. My name is Mike,
and I'm Tim, your co-host.
And here in Cleveland, everything is earned.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's about right.
That's it.
Blue collar.
Blue collar. All day.